Hey there. Welcome to episode 21 of the Boob Report podcast, powered by Helix Interactive. Today, I'm hanging out with Lucinda Testo, an unbelievably strong woman who wants to share her unusual story of how she and her family have dealt with breast cancer. Let's get started. Just start. Okay, we are here. And so we have an interesting episode today of the Boob Report podcast. I belong to a few groups on social media that are, promote podcasts for guests and speakers and things like that. And I put a call out to get some guests, and Lucinda answered my call, my virtual call, and she has an incredibly unique story to share with us today. So we're just going to dive right in because you guys are just going to be blown away by this. So Lucinda, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Michelle. So I will jump right in. When I saw your post in the group, I was like, wow, not only do I have a story to tell, but it's a recent story to tell. So I was diagnosed with stage 2B breast cancer earlier this year. I believe I got my actual confirmation diagnosis on April 1st of this year. I'm 42 years old. And what's interesting is I have an older sister who is a breast cancer survivor, both paternal aunts, also breast cancer survivors, and a paternal grandmother who unfortunately lost her battle to breast cancer. We've all had genetic testing done, and we have all tested negative for the BRCA1, BRCA2 gene, or really any gene that's been, that's already discovered, which leads me to believe that perhaps it is a gene that just hasn't been discovered yet. Another interesting fact is my grandmother was diagnosed in her late 50s. Both aunts were in their early 50s. My older sister was 39 when she was diagnosed, and I was 42. So there also seems to be something where it kind of almost backs itself up 10 years with each generation,
right?
Which is kind of scary. So the quick and dirty is because I have a long family history of breast cancer. I've been getting mammograms and ultrasounds since I was around 34, 35 years old. And I usually get them every August. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, everything was backed up because places were closed down. So my mammogram and ultrasound got pushed back to March of this year. And I always have to get an ultrasound also because I have super dense breasts. I got the mammogram looked great. I got the ultrasound, and I got the dreaded callback the next day. And I've been called back before, but this time it felt different, because they weren't just like, oh, it's probably nothing, come on in. It was actually, we saw something we didn't like. And so we're going to have you come back in.
I wish there was a better way to say that. It's like, really?
Agreed.
Yeah.
And the second they said that, I was like, well, I've got breast cancer. Like I just kind of like in my gut knew. And I went back and they took some more images, and the radiologist came back minutes later, and he's like, I'm going to send you to get it biopsied. So of course, then the panic sets in, and you're like, oh gosh, like not me too. I got the biopsy. It did come back right before Easter weekend. I got the results that it was positive for cancer. So they set me up to meet with a very reputable breast surgeon in the state of Connecticut. And I met with her, and she said, look, I'm going to send you for an MRI. An MRI will pick up anything. So if it's something that the mammogram missed, it came up on the ultrasound, the MRI is even more sensitive than that. And I will say nothing came up on the mammogram. So if I had just had a mammogram, I would have been in really big trouble.
Right. Yeah.
So I had the MRI done, and the MRI picked up 2 more spots, both of which had to be biopsied also.
You froze a little bit. The video did, but you're good. We'll just keep rolling with the audio. We'll try. Oh, we may have lost her. There we go. It's okay. We're all good. I can't, you're on mute.
Okay.
Okay. No worries.
I don't know what happened.
Oh, this is all good. This is why I have a producer. It's all good.
Okay. Okay, super. All right. All right. So anyway, so if I had just had the mammogram, because the mammogram showed nothing, I would have been in really big trouble. So the MRI unfortunately picked up 2 more spots, both of which I had to have biopsied. One was just a cyst. The other one was also cancer. So I am so thankful that I was sent for that MRI, because otherwise the surgeon would have gone in, taken out the one tumor. Who knows if she would have seen the other one? It was really very deep in there.
Yeah.
So I went in for surgery. I had both tumors removed. It turned out they were actually connected like barbells. And then it's waiting for the dreaded test results of like, okay, well, how bad of a cancer is it? So I had a lumpectomy. I did not need a mastectomy. I had a lumpectomy. I had some lymph nodes removed. Unfortunately, they did find 2 positive lymph nodes, which is not the news that I was hoping to get. I thought for sure it was going to be chemo and radiation, just as my older sister had. And to my surprise, they said, you don't need chemo. So I had to do 6 weeks every day radiation. And because it is an estrogen positive cancer, I have to do hormone suppression treatment for the next 10 years, which includes, because I'm premenopausal, an injection that I have to go to the hospital to get once a month, every month for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I have to take tamoxifen, which is an estrogen blocker, every day for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I just wrapped up treatment at the end of August. And so everything is still kind of fresh, kind of raw. But, I think the biggest message that I would want to get out to people is go for your routine screenings. And if doctors say you've got dense breasts and they tell you to go get the ultrasound, go get the ultrasound.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually shared my experience on Facebook, which I'm not typically one to share my personal life like that, but it felt too important for me not to. And I have to say, for as long as I've been on Facebook, I don't think I have ever had so many people respond with, thank you, I'm like 2 years past due for a mammogram, or, oh, geez, the doctors always recommend an ultrasound and I never follow up because I just assume I'm fine. And I'm like, oh my God, no, you have to go, just go.
Yeah, the thing that I find interesting, Lucinda, and I never really thought about this beforehand, is the amount of women who have dense breast tissue. I thought that was an anomaly, but I swear to God, every person that I've talked to now, whether they've been diagnosed with breast cancer or not, are like, yeah, I always have to go back for at least one more, after the original mammogram because I have dense breast tissue. I'm like, what is happening that all of us have dense breast tissue?
I have no idea.
Because I had never heard that before. I've made a note to myself that I really want to talk to some doctors and see if this is something that's been happening all along, or if environment or diets or what the heck is
because they make you think that it's like something not normal, like, oh, you've got really dense breasts.
Yes.
Okay, but I mean, I hear most people I know say the same thing, that they also have to do a mammogram and ultrasound.
Yeah. And I did the digital imaging. So I had my first mammogram, got the call for the second one, same thing, dense breast tissue. And I swear to God, with dense breast tissue, you would have thought they were bigger. But anyway, that's just a whole nother complaint. So I was used to getting that second call like you. And then they wanted me to go for the digital imaging which I did that, and they still didn't like it. So they sent me on for the ultrasound. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's now granted that was 5 years ago, and this is something you and I were discussing, in our little green room before we came on and started recording, is the advances that they have made in science and research, and namely in regards to the genetic testing, because like you were saying, I'm sure there's some marker in there that they
Right.
just haven't discovered yet,
Oh, that's my gut.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And who knows, your family could be part of a unique research study or something like that. Because I donated my breast tissue because when I had my bilateral mastectomy, because the type of cancer I have usually strikes women in their late 50s to early 60s. And it got me they found it when I was 49, but my surgeon told me that I could have had this anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So yeah, so I was sort of a little unicorn with the type of cancer that I had. So I was like, yeah, take it, study it, see what you can find out, more power to you. So I bow down to scientists and researchers and doctors that
Absolutely.
devote their life to doing stuff like this.
Well, I also have a younger sister, and so now my younger sister, I'm 42, she's 39, which is when my older sister was diagnosed, and her risk now like really goes through the roof because now she has two older sisters, both paternal aunts and a paternal grandmother, and I am thankful that she had her children a little bit later, and so she had not gone for her baseline mammogram and ultrasound, and they just skipped right over to an MRI for her. And so she will now be getting an MRI and then 6 months later, mammogram and ultrasound, which is what my treatment plan will be. And everybody else's now from now until forever.
Right.
But my older sister has two daughters. I have a son and a daughter. My younger sister has two daughters, and they're all going to be at super high risk.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, I mean, it's we don't want to scare people. You and I were talking about this, but it is kind of scary to think, it wasn't something that would have been picked up on a genetic test, because a lot of people are like, well, we should all do genetic testing, part of the preventative healthcare stuff. Well, yours wouldn't have been found. I didn't have a marker for cancer. So I mean, no one in my family has had cancer.
Well, my breast surgeon actually said that most incidents of breast cancer are totally random and that they're not familial.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, I mean, the fact that it's in my family, I've been getting screened for years. But I mean, if it wasn't, I mean, who knows?
Right. Yeah. A statistic I heard from a doctor is 20% of breast cancer is familial. It's genetic. 80%, luck of the draw.
Right.
So yeah. And we were discussing at one point, weren't we, about the incidences, because you live in Connecticut and I'm in Colorado, and your instance for cancer in your state is pretty high.
Yeah. So what I've read is that Connecticut, up until this year, was the number one state in the United States for highest incidence of breast cancer. And I heard we flip-flopped with, I want to say it was maybe New Hampshire, but I got to tell you, a lot of the New England states were in the top 5 for highest incidence of breast cancer. So I don't know if that's environmental. I don't know what it is, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's I know here in Colorado, well, the national average of women getting diagnosed is 1 in 8, but in Colorado it's 1 in 7, and they have no idea why. I mean, it could be anything. But one thing that I did find interesting is the number one cause of death in the state of Colorado is cancer, not just breast cancer, but all cancers. It's the number one cause of death. Heart disease is the second. So, in a lot of states, cancer doesn't even sometimes make the top 5. And we're ranked as one of the healthiest states, in the country. And for some reason, we've got a very high instance of cancers here. So
it makes you wonder.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I was a total stress queen. No doubt in my mind that it was a combination of stress, my environment, and, my diet, I'm sure. It was a combination of all those things. And we've talked about this before on the show. Everybody has cancer cells in their body. It's just whether or not they set up base camp.
Right.
So that's what you're dealing with. But I think one thing that I did want to circle back on is you and I discussed this, our previous, call before we started recording, was the survivor's guilt that, that we go through. And I like to touch on this occasionally because I think it's very important, because I think there are more women that suffer with this than would like to admit it.
Completely agree. And so, if you don't mind, I'll share two kinds of guilt that I have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, the first guilt that I have, and it sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but the feelings are real. My older sister, I had 2 tumors. She had 1, and my tumors were 3 times the size of hers. And she had 1 positive lymph node. I had 2 positive lymph nodes. Somehow she had to have 2 rounds of chemo and radiation, and I didn't need chemo at all. And I had to have radiation, and they, went out to my lymph node region to zap me over there too. So I even have some guilt that like my cancer wasn't as bad as hers, because she had to do 2 rounds of chemo. And I mean, chemo's really tough on the body. I mean, really tough. So I almost feel like a little bit of weird guilt that like mine wasn't as bad. Still serious, but it wasn't I didn't have to have, my treatment wasn't as extreme.
Right.
And then, I know I had shared with you that I have a neighbor across the street who was diagnosed at 37 with metastatic breast cancer. So it was about 2 years ago around this time of year. And she was, very open about her diagnosis and how there's not a lot of research for metastatic breast cancer. And she fought her damnedest. And unfortunately, she just passed away last week, leaving behind a husband, a 9-year-old daughter, and a 5-year-old son. And I get chills as I'm talking about it. And it literally makes me feel sick. I did a lot of crying off and on for days. Of course, not that I want to switch places with her, but it's just the injustice.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense. I mean, she wasn't even 40, so it doesn't run in her family. She wasn't even 40. Why would she be going for screenings yet? Right. And she ends up with a breast cancer that had already gone from the breast to the lymph node to her liver.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's all sorts of survivor's guilt where it's like, well, geez, like, did I even really have cancer? Because it didn't kind of like rise to, something that serious. And again, I know like logically it's ridiculous, but my husband, for me, at the end of my radiation had thrown me kind of like a surprise end of treatment celebration. So he got like one of those like really big obnoxious yard signs, it says like fight like a girl with like the breast cancer ribbon and everything. Yeah. And there was people, like tons of people at the house. And while I felt like honored that he would do that for me, there was part of me that it's like they're probably looking at the window being like, she doesn't deserve a party, like she barely went through anything.
Yeah. No, it's, I totally respect that. And again, that's why I like to talk about it, because every woman's journey is different. And what you went through was incredibly traumatic, and just living with the fear on a daily basis, having cancer run in your family, even though you guys have no idea why it does. So I get it. It's incredibly hard to deal with and to explain to someone, because you sitting here saying that you had to do radiation and this and that. I didn't have to do chemo or radiation. I didn't have to. I had 6 tumors, and I just had everything removed with a bilateral mastectomy. And sometimes I felt like, stop complaining about the pain, stop being a baby, stop doing this, stop doing that. Your journey was not as hard as this person's. That's right, because my journey was different.
Right.
So, and yours is different from, the beautiful soul that lives across the street from you.
Mhm.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. I think that's why it's also scary for all of
Right.
us. But, we just have to look at it, respect that person, love that person's soul and beauty and their time here on earth, and
Yep.
take that and move on as
And
hard as
giving
it is.
ourselves our own grace for,
Yes.
like you said, what we did go through.
Mm.
And you know what? Like, maybe I didn't need chemo, but I got to tell you, there was still a lot of sleepless nights, a whole lot of crying, a whole
Mhm.
lot of like, you know, why me? And even now, like, I have to go back to the oncology department once a month to get this, and Lupron injection to suppress my hormones. And every time I walk in there, it's triggering for me.
Yeah.
The smells. Another thing I always noticed is every time I would go, I'd be like the youngest person around. Not that I want other young people to have cancer, but I would like look around and I'm like, man, like everybody's got like 10, 20, 30, 40 years on me. And then
Mhm.
like that would make me feel really upset.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, like it doesn't go away.
It
Every
doesn't.
day when I have to pop that tamoxifen in my mouth and
Mhm.
suffer with the weight gain and the joint pain, but at least I'm alive. And
Right. Now, I'm curious, just want to touch on the shot that you have to get, because I honestly have not heard of this before. And is it because you're premenopausal and you're
Mhm.
still producing estrogen?
Yes.
Obviously. Okay.
Yep. So 42 premenopausal, and so the Lupron injection, which I have to get right in the butt.
Hmm.
Um, the purpose of it is to suppress my ovaries.
Okay.
And so it essentially puts me in like a chemically induced menopause.
Okay. Okay.
So
Yeah.
now I get like the hot flashes and the mood swings, and I don't sleep anymore. And
Oh, score. Yeah.
it's a,
Welcome to the club.
it's a good
Yeah.
time.
I know I swear to God, the hot flashes, I got to tell you, funny thing is when I went through my breast cancer and had my bilateral mastectomy and all of that, I literally stopped having my period. I actually started my period the day before my surgery, which is just a whole nother,
Oh, jeez.
awesome, icing on the cake for that. But, I actually stopped having my period. And the whole menopause thing just sort of was on
Interesting.
hold. Yeah. I didn't have hot flashes. I didn't have any of that. And I was cold all the time, which was amazing, because I had gone from, I would wear a tank top and flip flops in 4 feet of snow. My hot flashes
Yeah.
were so bad, but they came back. The next year they came back with
Yeah.
a vengeance. So
They're
yeah.
not fun.
No, no,
They're
no,
not
not at
fun.
all. And for me, since my cancer was estrogen based as well, I couldn't do any hormone replacement therapy. So
Right.
it was just kind of, you just kind of got to suck it
Mhm.
up. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I literally, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say this, I literally feel like I've aged about 10 years, 10 to 20 years in the course of 2021.
mhm,
But I'm alive. My prognosis is pretty good. My risk for it coming back is relatively low if I continue with their treatment plan. So I really just have to look at it as this is part of my journey. Spread awareness
mhm.
and be there for anybody else who, if God forbid, they have to go through the same thing. But really looking at it as like this is part of my journey, and
Yeah, it is what
you
it
know,
is.
it is
Yeah.
what it is.
I get that. I think you reach a certain point. It took me a little bit longer. You're leaps and bounds ahead of where I was, because this is still so fresh,
Mhm. It's very
and
fresh.
new
Yeah.
for you. So, yeah, it took me a while.
Mhm.
It took me about a year to get to the point where I was like, okay, you know what? I had cancer.
Yep.
So, and I've got to figure out how to live with this and, do something about it,
Right.
change my life a little bit. I will
Right.
say that I enjoy things a lot more now. I give
Mhm.
myself permission to be joyful and happy
Mhm.
and, experience things. And I take tons of pictures. Drives people crazy, but I don't care because
I
I
love
love to.
taking pictures
Yes,
too.
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, even if my food, yeah, I'm the total dork that takes pictures when I go out to eat with my husband. And he's just like, really, babe? And I was like, you know what? It makes me happy. It really
Yeah.
does. I can't explain it.
Do
I'm not,
it.
I love it. And my kids, they've gotten used to it when we're all together. They know, okay, we're going to be taking pictures. We're going to be doing this, they're,
Yep.
they're very accommodating
Good.
because that's what I like to do. So
Good. Good.
yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I am fascinated to learn more. I think at some point we will have to have you come back on, because I'm hoping as you're going through this journey with your survivorship and learning more about the genetic testing, I'm just really curious if the doctors have even, asked you, sent you to a geneticist or something like that, so that maybe they could study what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, they recommend getting updated genetic testing. I'm trying to get my older sister to go, but because of the family history, my younger sister was just sent for genetic testing. Hers didn't come back with anything either.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to keep up as long as insurance covers it, of getting updated testing. I don't know if it's every 5 years, 3 years, 5 years, for sure. And that's, for my daughter, for my nieces.
Right.
So, and then, I had expressed to the geneticist that I was concerned about my daughter. I mean, she's only 10, right? So,
But yeah.
but I learned that they take the youngest person diagnosed in the family for familial cancers and subtract 10 years. So because my older sister was 39, my daughter will have to start getting, and my nieces will have to start getting tested at 29.
Right. Right.
So,
I think that as frightening as it is to know that, I also look at it as knowledge is power.
absolutely.
So, at least you have a better idea of what could happen, what could possibly happen, but you at least know that you're going to get a baseline, find out for sure. Because I think for me, it would be more scary, a much scarier scenario to not have any idea.
Right. No, I agree. I agree.
So,
And if caught early enough, breast cancer is very treatable.
yes, it is. That's a
So,
good thing. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's, it changes your life, but that's why I do the podcast, is because I think it makes women see things a little differently and experience things a little differently. And we all have a story to share. And I think that of all the women out there across the country, it really helps to be able to know that they're not the only one going.
Absolutely.
This.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I love what you're doing. And, knowledge is power. And like I said, spreading awareness, and get the extra exam if they recommend it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, listen to your body. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You've got to listen to your body. I know a lot of times, I mean, I had no idea. It hit me out of the blue, honestly. Even when they called me back and I went in for the ultrasound, I was like, this is ridiculous, because they kept saying it's probably nothing.
Right.
And the radiologist explained to me, that's who told me, everybody has cancer cells in their body. So, I just went in when I got that call, it just totally blew me away.
Yeah.
Because I had no pain, nothing, no outward symptoms at all.
No, I didn't either. And my tumors were located in a part of my breast that I probably never would have found a lump.
Right.
Because they were closer to the chest wall. And so, I mean,
yeah,
if we're going off of self-exams, it probably would have been way too late.
Right.
By the time.
Yeah. They're still important, but they need to be backed up.
Oh yeah.
Mammograms and digital imaging.
Absolutely.
Like so yeah, absolutely. Because I'm the same way. I had 6 tumors. I was manhandled. You couldn't feel them. Mine were very, almost like gel, whatever, there were no lumps, they never felt them.
And I thought like cancer tumors were hard.
Yeah. Oh no, these were very pliable. I mean, seriously,
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's, definitely, do the self breast exams, but definitely go see your doctor on a regular basis and get those
Yep.
mammograms for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, Lucinda, thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you,
the time
Michelle.
and sharing your story with us. And I know that we will be circling back because, like I said, your story after we met the first time just has resonated with me. And I am just fascinated to really learn more about the science and the genetic side of it. So
Yes. Well, I
that's
will definitely keep you posted if there's
absolutely,
any updates there.
I appreciate that. Well, you're stuck with me. We've met. So you're stuck with me. I'm in your life now. So, all right, my dear. Thank you
All
again.
right.
So
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
And we look forward to having you join us again at some point.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Such an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Lucinda. We have links and information where you can learn more about the instances of breast cancer in each state and how they vary among different groups of people on our website at the www.theboobreport.com/podcast, episode 21 show notes. And a very big thank you to all of you for spending time with us today. Be sure to like and follow us, and definitely share the podcast with your friends. You can become an active listener and support this podcast by clicking on the podcast link on our website at theboobreport.com. Thanks again, and take care.